Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Must Play, a Fair Wagers golf podcast where we evaluate the country's most talked about golf courses to determine if they are truly a must play. And I'm Shawn Massey.
I'm TJ Van Gunten.
And today we're discussing Elk Ridge Golf Course in Carson, Washington, right on the Columbia River Gorge. And our guest this week is Scott Brooks, also known as PNW Golfer on Instagram, a brilliant photographer located right in Portland, Oregon. Scott, welcome to the pod.
Hey, thank you guys for having me.
I should say videographer and photographer because some of the work you do on the aerial is amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. It's, I joke. Anybody that knows me knows I always joke that I hope one day Instagram will become a photo app again. But
Yeah.
it's very much a video app now. And so, certainly have had to add that videography onto the tagline the last few years for sure.
If it's a photo app again, are we going to be adding filters again to our stuff? Or...
Oh, man. I mean, that's another one that's funny. Everybody's always like, well, it doesn't really look like that. I'm like, yes, every photo that I post goes into Lightroom to some degree. But I'm big on, I want it to look how I saw it in the moment. You know, I don't need it to be super saturated. And then people are always like, it's just like all your stuff looks the same. And I'm like, well, because sunrise and sunset, that's the most important times to photograph a golf course if you want the course to look the best. So, but yeah, I get a little moody sometimes with the black and white edits, which if you've seen some of the recent stuff coming from my Sand Valley and Landman trip, there's going to be more black and white to come. And then I'll post a bunch of black and white and everybody will be like, this is too much black and white, back to the color stuff. So you can never
please everyone.
Yeah,
you can never please everyone, and you can never please the algorithm enough either. Like,
yeah, right.
As soon as you think that you've figured out the algorithm, they're going to pull the rug out right underneath you.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, well, speaking of the black and white, and some of your work, I would consider art. Actually, most of your work I would consider art. Don't know why I said some. Your website says golf is art, and I was just curious what came first for you in your background. Did you have the art side first, or were you golfer first?
So golf was always a big part of my life from a young age. My dad always played. He kind of played in the men's clubs growing up. My parents got divorced when I was quite a bit younger. So weekends I was away with my dad. You know, we up early and at the golf course, and that's pretty much where we were at. If we weren't, I played baseball growing up, all the sports growing up, but baseball specifically. So if we weren't on the baseball field, we were typically on the golf course. That's kind of what formed my interest in the game. I was never very good at a young age, classic baseball player. I just wanted to hit it as far as I could. But I certainly was able to experience a lot of the golf courses here in the area, again, from a very young age. And so that was always an interest of mine. And then, a little bit later on in my adolescence, I guess I would say, is landscape photography became very important to me. Ansel Adams is still one of my favorite, favorite inspirations. And he's done, I guess, understanding golf architecture. What I was able to incorporate from landscape photography into golf architecture photography has been very important for me. And that's why I think, it was an easy transition once I started this, whole thing a few years ago.
Yeah. Perfect Venn diagram for you, right? You got the landscape, the photography, artistic, and golf as your, background. What was the first course that you professionally got paid to shoot? Do you remember?
Yeah. So the first one that I ever did was Gamble Sands. So that was the first place that,
when it opened, or how far back?
That was back in, 2019 was actually the first. It was pre-COVID.
Okay.
And this all started, I started Pacific Northwest Golf, the Instagram page, because on my personal page, people were like, we get it. You like golf. All you post is golf. We don't need to see it that much. And I also was doing, I've been a residential real estate broker here in the area for 10 years. So kind of had two passions going on at once. So I decided to separate it. And then after a year or two, kind of got a decent following. And had a friend of a friend who was up at Gamble Sands doing some marketing. He was like, "We'd love to have you up. You tell a great story." And I wasn't even flying the drone back then. It was just a little handheld camera. And I get this question a
Wow.
lot. Like some of my old stuff, you'll see it could be an iPhone photo. If the light's right, I'm gonna be taking photos. It doesn't matter what I have in
Yeah.
my hands. And I'll also, if we're playing golf at sunset, there's a chance I might disappear for a few holes, and you might just, I might catch back up in a little bit if the light's too good.
Yeah.
I'm also known to do that too. So don't, I always say if we're going to play a match, you better select your teammate wisely, because there's a chance I only have 7 clubs in my bag, and there's a chance that I could just totally go off the walls if the light's too good. So
Everyone always says that they are the best scramble partner that you could have, and you are admitting that you are probably the worst scramble partner that someone could
Yeah.
have. Props to you
yeah,
on
I
that.
mean, my scores at Sand Valley could tell you exactly what it looks like. It can either be a
Hmm.
95 or it can be a 75, and I play anywhere between a 7 and a 9 handicap. So yeah, I can either be your best friend or I can never get an invite from you again, just depending on how the round goes. That's for sure.
Hey, I want to extend an invite now, though, to Gamble Sands, because I'll tell you what, that is the course I think we're going to go play next year when the second one opens.
Oh, hey,
We're going up to Brewster, I believe. So, I mean,
you
we've
got
never been. I'm super excited.
you guys let me know. I'll be up there a few times next year, just doing grand opening stuff and all that. But
Yeah.
certainly let me know those dates, because I'd love to come up and be your Sherpa to show you around, because that's
Yeah.
one I'll always have a special spot in my heart for Gamble Sands, just because of they were one of the courses that gave me the first opportunity to do what I love to
Hmm.
do. And I mean, again, I remember that first trip in 2019, standing there with a few people on staff there, and we were looking out over where the second course. And even then, they had the master plan. They knew that second course was coming, and it's been a journey to get everybody on board with funding and everything like that. Because,
Yeah.
as you guys know, building a golf course is extremely expensive, even if you own all the land that the course is going to be on.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so it's a very cool spot. I guess I should say, I hate doing this, but like I guess before Landman, before I ever played Landman, Gamble Sands was the most fun I've ever had on a golf course.
Okay.
And so that's
Wow.
very 1 and 2. I think they're both. You can go out and shoot your career best out there if conditions are tame and there's not a lot of wind.
Yeah.
And watching a ball roll around a golf course, there's not 2 places that are better. Firm and fast conditions that you'll hit a ball and you'll be like, is that thing still going? Yep, it's still going, still going.
Yeah.
So
And that's also the way that I know David McClay Kidd designed that one, and he's a big proponent of the landforms and how you use that from even off the fairway. He talks about it all the time in some of his courses he's done in Bend and over at Bandon. And when we played it, TJ played Bandon for the first time last year with us, and we didn't actually play Bandon Dunes. That was the one course we didn't play out of the 5.
yeah.
I played it the year before. But even seeing that course and some of the other ones where you're like, I don't need to hit a wedge here. I could totally just pull out the putter. It's pretty firm, pretty fast, even off here. And I see how the slope is asking me to do this.
Oh yeah.
I love that aspect of golf because that's something you don't see that much out here in the US.
Well, and yeah, I think I'm very fortunate to live where I do, because I think Oregon public golf is, I mean, it's the best. You can't get any better. Bandon Dunes. I've been very fortunate to play each course probably a dozen times in the last 5, 6, 10 years,
Hmm.
and it just is. It doesn't get much better than all those golf courses on the same property. And then you factor in, that's the one thing I guess that Sand Valley, there's no Pacific Ocean at Sand Valley, right? You're in the middle of Wisconsin, you're landlocked,
Yeah.
very beautiful scenery, all that said. But on a beautiful day, on a clear day, you look out and you can see those white caps coming off the ocean, and you see what's been built at Bandon Dunes. And I've had a lot of friends. I haven't been to Scotland or Ireland. Definitely on my list to get over there and play some true links golf. But I have a couple friends that lived in Ireland for some time, and they say, yeah, Ireland's great. We have a ton of great golf courses, but they're not all on the same property, and they're not all 3 minutes away
right
from
there.
each other. And so again, it's a very special spot down there. But you know what? I'll tell you what, the place that we're going to be talking about in this episode has a lot of those same features. The ball will roll, a lot of cool undulation out there. And probably, if there's one course that I know is going to be fast and firm, or at least as fast and firm as you can get out here in the winter, it's Elk Ridge for sure.
That's a great segue. I was going to say, we're talking a lot of Oregon golf, but how about some Washington golf here? So, okay, so where do you think Elk Ridge sits in the Portland area golf scene? I know it's 50 plus miles away, but if you were to group it in the, courses you have options to play on a weekend, where does that fit?
I think, I'm in Southwest Portland, so I would, I guess unless you're on, out by Pumpkin Ridge or very west side, I'm probably one of the furthest from Elk Ridge, and it's about an hour and 5 minutes from my front door. I will say on a weekend, the time you spend driving out there, you're going to make up in pace of play compared to some of the courses here in town. I've never played out there in longer than 4 hours and maybe 30 minutes when it's blowing 30 degrees and the course is packed. And it's a very hard golf course. Whereas, you go around any of these munis, a lot of them, unfortunately, in town.
Are you talking about the back nine? Are you talking about the back nine at Eastmo?
Oh man, yeah. So again, you're 5 hours at least, 5.5 probably on a nice weather day, Saturday or Sunday. And Elk Ridge is another one. I've played it for 10, 15, 15 years probably. And I've seen 4 different ownership groups own it. I've been up there, and I've been up there in mornings where they don't put the flags back in on the greens after they're done mowing it, and I'm just walk up and I'm like, all right, well, I know where the green is, so I'm just gonna throw it up there. And then now, I would say that the people, the most recent ownership group and crew that's up there now is really doing a good job of, getting it. I guess I say this with a little mixed emotion, but getting it more well known and getting it more on the radar, because
it's not a secret anymore.
No, right? It is certainly not. That used to be my little hidden gem that I would tell people about. And then it was funny because a buddy of mine who picked up the game, later on in life, was coming up to me and was like, "Oh, have you heard about this Elk Ridge place?" And I'm like, "Come on, man, have I heard about it?" I'm like, "You probably heard about it from someone I told about it." But it's a very, very cool spot that, again, I would say there's 2 or 3 courses that public courses that I would play over it in the Portland area. Probably being like Reserve South. I love Reserve North. I just don't know why I like Reserve South better. But Elk Ridge, this is another thing I've said before that I get some hate for. I think Elk Ridge could be a top 5 public course in the state of Washington. It is very good value. You're never going to pay more than $70, $75, even with a cart. And again, the conditions. I've been up there on Christmas Eve when every other place in the valley is cart path only, soaked out. And I remember very fondly driving up cart path only halfway up the first hole. The guy in the pro shop comes out, drives up, and I'm like, "Oh God, what did I do? I did something wrong. Did I have to pay?" And he comes up and he goes, "Hey man, it's not cart path only, right?" Because he saw me walking all the way over to the other side to hit my ball. And I was like, "Oh, I had no idea." He's like, "There could be snow on the ground and we might not be cart path only." And so
because they sit on a steep slope, right? So it drains really, really well. That's part of the history I've gotten here, is how well this course is known to be drier than others in the area.
Yep. So it's that, and it's a lot of the volcanic rock that sits throughout the Columbia River Gorge.
Right.
And so when they built it, they actually did a good job putting a huge layer of sand down on top, before they grew in grass. But that volcanic rock allows water to seep through very easily. And, another segue back into what I do professionally as a residential realtor. That's why there's a lot of moisture issues here in the Northwest with homes and
Yeah.
basements and all that, is because our area, you look out the window, you see volcanoes up and down the Cascade Range. And I mean, that volcanic rock has formed a lot of these areas that we, call home. And it is, by far the best drainage solution that nature has ever given us, for sure. Because
Yep.
I mean, again, and shout out to the greens crew, shout out to the turf crew up there too, that do a very good job. But it's they were blessed with some very good land to build that course on, for sure.
Yeah. So we just went up there for the first time this summer, got perfect weather. TJ, you want to talk about your first time? Because we were together on that, your first impressions.
Yeah. Drive-in is immaculate. I think I want to say I've definitely sat through and watched the GoPro footage of the drive-in at regular speed and not just actually fast sped up to get us to the golf course. It's one of those ones to where growing up in Arizona, living in San Diego now, there's not a whole lot like that out here. So that's a very fun, cool drive. It's also really funny taking your friend who is admittedly a map nerd and also a golf course nerd, and watching him sit on his Google Maps and like pan around while we're driving around, trying to look at like where things are. And it's one of Shawn's
Is that weird?
character traits. It's not weird. It's just who he is. But it's fun like watching him kind of nerd out and go into those things, and it partially plays into why he does the history on these podcasts, because he cares so much about that and he loves it. But the course, phenomenal. What's really one of the things that stuck out to me is how it doesn't feel like it's a spot big enough to house 18 holes. It's weird. Like it's really weird thinking about how the course like winds through itself and being like, man, I really feel like I never really drove too far away from the clubhouse to play the entire round. And obviously we can touch on it, and I'm sure we'll all have it in our pros here section, but like the views from that golf course are something else. And it's that I'm very akin to it all. What about you, Massey?
Yeah.
What sticks out in your mind?
We had played a bunch of courses that trip, and I've regularly come up to you guys, Scott, and play quite a few different courses like Reserve and Langdon and Eastmoreland and Heron Lakes and all of them. And this is the first time I had been that way. I didn't know there was a course on the gorge that far. I was familiar with like Bridge of the Gods, and a few other like landmarks, and I was like, "There's a course over there?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's great, man." I was like, "Oh, like by Camas?" And he's like, "No, way past Camas. Like we're going on the road." And so, of course, as a map nerd, I got super excited about like, okay, like where is this thing? And as you're driving on that highway and you get up at elevation and you're looking down at the river and the gorge, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I'm praying the course has some sight lines or views to that. And sure enough, like even the driving range, you're facing the other way, but you just turn around and you can see it all right behind you.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a cool experience because like for me, golf, one of the big things is the setting. And it's like, where are you right now? And if you weren't golfing and you were just walking your dog here, you wouldn't stop looking. Like you would just be gobsmacked at where you are. Same with Bandon or in those courses right on the cliffs. And I was like, this is so cool. And the fact that I get to play golf on this excellent course too with my buddies, like great experience. So first impressions, I was blown away by the area.
Yeah. I think it's one of those that, the drive-in. So if you take the Oregon side or the Washington side, you get two very different perspectives too.
Yeah.
And it is the Columbia River Gorge is obviously a very, very beautiful place. I think the one thing that a lot of people I will say is that a lot of people think Elk Ridge is going to have like crazy river views, which you can't really see any of the river.
No.
But one of my favorite things is going up there and, again, closer to winter time, and some of the gorge, the mountaintops will be all white, and they'll still, and then the north side of that, I guess the Oregon side, the north side will still have snow, all the way until May, June, just because it gets no sun.
Yeah.
But that property, one, to your point, again, is it feels like a Chandler Egan, where it's like they had to fit it on this piece of land, and the routing is so smartly done that they got everything in there. But yeah, the views up there, which it's also a windy place, so it can be windy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the views up there are just second to none. And yeah, it's one of those where I always say, if I'm at a place where I can be, maybe not playing that good of golf, but look around and still be enjoying views like that, it's hard to have a bad day out there.
Agreed. Yep. Okay, we've talked about the setup, the location, the wind. A lot of these things all come into my history portion here that I'd love to kind of talk to you guys about. I feel like you already know a lot of history about this course, Scott, but maybe there's something I'll go through here that you haven't learned yet. But before we get into the history, we want to hear more about our sponsor for today's episode, which is Gimme Pro.
Today's episode of Must Play is sponsored by the Gimme Pro, the world's first ball picker designed to fit in your golf bag's side pocket. With a 24 ball capacity, you can straighten up your short game in just a short time. This baby's also made from aluminum, so it's ready for all weather practice, whether you're living in Phoenix and it's scalding hot, or in the Pacific Northwest and it is freezing cold. The team over at Gimme Pro is also giving all Must Play listeners an exclusive discount, so head over to their site, gimmepro.golf. That's GIMMEPRO.golf, and use code MustPlay10 for a 10% discount and get yourself on the road to better chipping.
Let's dive into the history of Elk Ridge. And we talked a little bit about how it's gone through a few different owners, but we're going to go back to the original owners of the land and not just the course here at Elk Ridge. So take a look at the Elk Ridge Golf Course on a map, and you're going to see the course sits on two roads, St. Martin's Road and Hot Springs Avenue. That's because this land was first settled back in 1874 by a man named Isidore St. Martin as part of the Homestead Act, which specified that any citizen moving out west could claim up to 160 acres of land if they lived on the property and improved it. St. Martin chose this specific spot due to the hot springs that he and his wife discovered right off the Wind River, a tributary to the larger Columbia River it sits next to. Hot springs were believed to cure all kinds of diseases back then and were a magnet for people who had been failed by traditional medicine at the time. St. Martin's wife, Margaret, also had a real knowledge of herbs and their curative powers, and she made good use of the mineral hot water to help people. So news of her healing powers actually spread rapidly in the 1870s, and people began to arrive in large numbers to bathe in the hot springs. Mm-hmm. Those early bathers actually had to navigate the Columbia River by steamboat, and they journeyed the 2 miles up the Wind River to the original bathhouses that the St. Martin family had built. In the early years, the family home actually housed all the guests that were coming onto their property, but as the numbers were increasing, they started to erect tents to accommodate all the travelers. And in 1897, St. Martin began construction on an actual hotel, which would open in 1900 with 24 rooms on 3 stories, which still stands today, and you can go see that hotel.
Yeah.
Really cool. 8 years later, as a railroad line would be built and now carried passengers from Portland and Vancouver into neighboring Carson, as the town around the resort began to grow, the St. Martin family and their heirs would continue to be prosperous and manage that hotel and property. For 74 years, it stayed in the family, throughout 2 world wars and a Great Depression, until they wanted to sell to a local man named Rudy Hedgewald in 1974. Rudy was a logger and a businessman who owned a mill nearby, but wanted to take over the resort he had frequented when he was younger. So in order to draw more people to the area from Portland, which was 55 miles away, he wound up building a 9-hole course in the late 1980s and debuted the course to locals and visitors alike. He would own that course until his death in 1994, and his estate sold the course to a family from South Korea who sent their son-in-law to redevelop it. They expanded to 18 holes and put in concrete cart paths and an irrigation system. But in 2005, the owners closed the course for a remodel that would limp along for 3 years. Russell Sheehan of Sherwood, who travels the world overseeing golf course construction, came in to supervise the remodel. Sheehan spent nearly 3 years at Elk Ridge reshaping the fairways, removing trees, and building massive greens and a 2-story clubhouse. In 2008, the course reopened, but then it abruptly closed again after 4 months when its owners ran out of money. They simply locked the gate and abandoned the property, and it became a cow pasture. And there the course sat, fairways with waist-high grass, brush sprouting out from the sand traps, greens disintegrating, until a man named Pete Cam, who owns Bonneville Hot Springs 12 miles to the west, became interested. He watched the failed remodels, the deterioration of the land, and an attempt by another investor to buy the property. And in July 2011, Cam paid off his tax liens and bought the Carson Hot Springs Resort and Golf Course from the lenders. So by that November, he had remodeling plan and hired a guy named Scott Coogan, a well-known golf course superintendent in Vancouver. The bones were here, Coogan said. We just had to turn it from a hay field into a golf course again. That winter and spring, Coogan's crews hacked down the tall fairway grass. They moved hundreds of sprinkler heads, reclaimed the massive sand traps, and tore up every green to rebuild them. Slowly, the course took shape, and the first 9 holes were reopened in July 2012 and the rest 3 months later. Coogan and the course manager, Greg Pedersen, spent most of 2013 fine-tuning the course and beginning to get the word out. Elk Ridge joined the Golf Now reservation system, hosted a few small tournaments, and focused on clubhouse amenities. Golfers started to hear about Elk Ridge and would become pleased, especially during the rainy months when they found a course that was way drier than all the others in the Portland area, due to its location on a steep, rocky slope that drained well on the volcanic rock. Mm-hmm. Today, the course does thousands of rounds per year, but it's still relatively unknown compared to the famous city courses for people who are new to the area. But for those who do make the trek along the Columbia River Gorge to play here, they will be treated to a beautiful drive and even better views once they tee it up on one. Yeah, I think you knew most of that, Scott. You mentioned quite a bit of that.
I mean, not, some of the history going way back. No, I did not. I knew that the land was settled and it was the same family for almost 100 years. Because, my dad, I'm 5th generation Oregonian, and my dad and mom both grew up in Portland, and, we are, both my grandparents in Portland. So, wow. They've gone up there for years, and, you always hear stories about the hot springs, and, but, I would say the more recent stuff, what I mentioned right when we started is, 4 or 5 different owners in the last however many years. And, some good times up there, some not so good times. I do remember playing it once before they removed some of the trees. And again, kind of being very mundane, not the undulation on the greens that you see today, and not kind of the shaping that you see. But again, it was actually, maybe, 5, 10. I remember when it was for sale a few years ago, because the current owners, they've done some good work, and so there is value in it. And so I think they've kind of thrown it out there to see what potentially offers would look like.
Right.
And I remember looking at it and thinking, man, if these numbers could work, it would be pretty cool to, figure out a way to make this work and start running this place. Especially, because it's not just a golf course, right? You have the hotel, you have the hot spring, and everything that comes with it. But that's where it gets complicating, right? Is you're not just a golf course operator, you're a hospitality provider now. It's that, and I couldn't have, again, it's a great introduction to the course, because it does explain the history, but it is, I would say that I think the family, the St. Martin family would be pretty happy to see what it's became today. Again,
I agree.
Maybe over the last 20 years, maybe not so much at times, but, it's coming back to I think its best point. And, again, they got a good head pro up there. They got some good people in place now to kind of continue, moving things forward. So.
Yep. Speaking of the original owners, I'm going to put a photo up on this video, but the Columbia River Gorge and its associated history, the reason I was able to go so far back on the Wildwood pod is that there is amazing historical documentation from some of the old newspapers and some of the history that's been written about this area. And they have a photo of Isadora St. Martin and Margaret St. Martin. Like their photos were taken.
Wow.
And I'm going to put them up right now, and you'll see it is insane to see like the owners that bought this land back then And Margaret St. Martin, her family was actually part of the tribe that lived here. So she came from that Native American background, and that was part of the reason that she knew how to use herbs and so many other local things in addition to the hot springs water. So really, really cool. And then my other favorite thing was, I'll put this up also, but in the 40s, the St. Martin family actually put ads out in the newspapers in Portland. And one of these ads has, no joke, 30 different diseases that they claim the hot springs water cures. And it's everything from your rheumatoid arthritis down to your tuberculosis. I mean, it's like legitimately everything and anything they claim it cures.
Yeah.
And so it was no wonder that like so many people were coming over to the hot springs.
Oh, well, and that's the thing, is it's like it's got this for the people that know it from what it is, it's always had kind of an interesting history, right? And so now knowing that's even better to be able to add to the story too. But yeah, I mean, again, it's a very, very cool spot. And, the steamboat that you spoke of, there's still a couple steamboats that run up and down the Columbia that you can rent out for private events or stay on. And it's a spot, again, like they take their history very seriously. And especially you have a lot of Native American tribes that are still very active in the area. And that's one of the reasons why the history has been preserved so well.
Yeah. How neat would that be to rent that out and take that on the river? That would be cool.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Well, speaking of the course, usually in this portion after the history, TJ kicks us off with some of the pros or the goods that we have about the course. So go for it.
Yeah. I think these two kind of go hand in hand, but one of them plays in a little bit more on the course. But like the views and the drive-in are the first things that obviously come to mind. I know it's a little bit of a distance to get out there, and it's not exactly a quote unquote Portland golf course. But the hour-long drive out there is so well worth it. Just especially for someone who is not from that area, it makes an hour-long drive that much more enjoyable, where you do actually end up taking the time and like putting your phone down. And I know a lot of us just tend to sit in a car and stare at our phone for like an hour if we've got an hour to kill, right? But this is one where you're not going to put your phone in your hand. You're going to put your phone down, kind of just stare at your window, take in some things that you're not going to get if you're not from the area all the time. And
unless
the views
you're looking at a map.
Unless you're looking at a map, of course. You get past Massey. But also the views from the course, especially from the first like 3 holes that I think are more up on like the northwest side of the property, where you're at the highest point because the course slopes downward, and you can kind of just turn around and kind of look back towards the clubhouse and look across the river at the mountains. It's super unfortunate that a lot of those trees up on the mountains burned down in that wildfire a few years back. But you could still see remnants of that, but you could still see also some incredible views. And then not to say that the views to the west aren't great either,
Yeah, totally. The one thing about the views too was we played it like kind of middle of the day or something like that, but I saw some photography at sunset and I was like, oh man, I really want to come back now. It looks so cool with the shadows that the gorge was making at sunset on the course. I'm assuming it shoots well at golden hour, probably.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a pretty hard course to shoot because of where it sits, and that light comes so quickly in the morning and then it leaves so quickly, because the majority of the light is coming when it's over the mountains, especially I guess in the summer it's a little bit different, but in the winter, I mean, man, you get very little light coming up over the Oregon side. And but yeah, I was out there 2 years ago, I think, when there was a fire over by Bull Run on the Oregon side, and the wind shifted while we were playing. It was very smoky for the first 9 holes. Then the wind shifted, and it was like just on the other side of Carson, all the smoke was right there, but we were in this pocket of clear, and the sun went back behind the smoke, and it created the most insane kind of red dawn look that I have ever seen. And of course, that was the one round that I did not have my drone. But it is what it is. Sometimes I have to make the decision when I'm going to the golf course. It's not even coming with me. My camera's not coming
Yeah.
I'm going to play golf today. And Elk Ridge is one of those spots where I enjoy playing golf so much that I really would rather just play golf.
Yeah.
But then, of course, it's always when I don't, when, the one time I don't have it is when the most special video could have been made, or, best
Yeah.
picks. But yeah, I would say my pros to the course, along with your guys' views certainly are one. But then honestly, I would have to say the undulation in the greens and the
Hmm.
fairways. It's not like you're going to get a bunch of lies that aren't even. It's not like you're standing on side slopes or anything crazy. But you get up to some of those greens and you think you're hitting a green and reg, and okay, well, it's an easy par. No, I don't think so. I mean, you'll
Yeah.
see some banding, type undulation out there. But then you forget that it's bent grass greens and they can roll at 11 or 12 when they want them to.
Yeah.
And just the greens, I think there's so much because when you guys played it, was the native grass, was it up or was it cut down pretty low?
It was cut down.
Yeah.
It wasn't too bad.
And
Yeah.
so, you can kind of spray it around out there pretty much a lot of the
Yeah.
holes. And there's a couple holes where, people are up there and they're like, where are you aiming? I'm like, don't worry, you can play where you're going to play. I'm going to go play, I'll aim down a different fairway because I know it's got a better look coming into the green, which one is it? It's like 10 going up the hill, 11, that like par 4 going back down. It's like I'll send it. You can send it over to the 12th going back up, and you're sitting down there almost flat with depending on where the pin's at, you're looking right at it with an 80-yard chip, rather than you're sitting on the fairway and you're going 60 yards down the hill trying to stop. But it's such a cool spot because it's not a link style course, but it plays a lot like a link style course. From your approach shot in to to all the green complexes.
Yeah. Speaking of the green undulation, like it hits you right on the first hole. on that first hole, TJ and I were scramble partners, and I thought we were money. And then we get up there, and there's a huge slope to go up, and they put the pin like right at the top of this. And I hadn't judged the speed yet. We of course I didn't practice that much putting, so I was like, oh shit, like I got to figure out what this is gonna do, And we could have put away, but like right off the first hole, it was like, oh, okay, these aren't flat greens. There's actually some stuff to this, which is cool.
Well, and I was gonna say the first green Scott. Is like gnarly. That back up right pin that they can put it on. So
yeah,
I played it one year after they just held like a small local college tournament. So I played it on the Monday morning, and the tournament was that weekend. Well, they left all the pins where the Sunday pins were for that Monday.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my! I mean, it was a lot of fun, but it was also like after like 3 holes, you were like, okay, I'm not scoring today. Like I can forget about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those.
Let's
days.
just have some fun out here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny that you said you hadn't practiced a ton, Massey, because one of my pros here was that not only do they have a good grass range, obviously love a grass range. That's always going to be like almost an automatic pass. But the putting green very well does set you up for what you can expect on the course. So for a person who does not play on a ton of things, greens that are 10s, maybe 11s, there's a lot of good undulation on the green to kind of get prepared for what to expect once you get out on the course. I remember Alex very specifically being like, I don't know why you guys are hitting balls. I think this was our 3rd straight day of golfing. It was our last round.
Okay.
So Massey, maybe you were just in a mind space of like, I've hit enough golf balls over the last 2 days and hit enough putts to where I don't necessarily need to spend a ton of time doing this.
It was because we were filming, and I was thinking more so about the setup, and I was worried about all that stuff. Yeah.
Always. Yeah. I'm sure, as Scott can attest, that's why you said you'll just flat out disappear.
Yeah.
But if we're filming like a 9-hole match and a scramble, you can't necessarily disappear for a few holes because you've got filming every shot as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the grass range plus putting green, phenomenal. And then, like you said, I feel like it's right in the middle in terms of difficulty. Like it's not a super punishing, at least in the conditions that we played it in, right? It's not like it's super punishing in terms of how tough it is. The approach shots in super narrow fairways. Like, it feels like it's a decently open golf course. Like you said, you can kind of spray it a little bit off the tee, but it's gonna punish you a little bit if you're not putting the ball in the right position on the green. To where traditionally, at least for me, greens in regulation are phenomenal. And then they quickly become an afterthought up there when I get up there and 3 or potentially even 4 putt on some of the tougher greens that are at Elk Ridge.
Yeah,
I'm talking about greens and reg. We played the scramble on the front 9 that went to the 10th hole, and we wound up. I won't say the result because we're going to publish something probably, right? But it was a good match. But after all the stakes were off, TJ became a scratch golfer. I swear to God, he was just going down the middle, green and reg. I think he said at some point, like on the 16th hole, he was like, "I've been like out of my mind on the back 9 here," and I was like, "Yeah, I know."
Well, let's see. I drove a par 4. Like, I had my first legitimate putt looking at an eagle ever on a golf course. I think at one point we were like 75 yards out, and I get out of the golf course, and obviously once we're done filming and we've made the turn, we're drinking a little bit. It's our last day on the trip, right? So and I look at Shawn and I was like, "Yeah, you know what, man? I think I'm just gonna like flight a nice sand wedge up here." And he goes, "Okay." And I like stick one to like within 10, and he's like, "Who are you?" Like, he's like, what is going on in your brain where like no pressure and a handful of cocktails turns you into a completely different single digit golfer? I was like, that's all it is.
It's the sweet spot, right? You got to find that. It's like, for me, it's like anywhere between like 2 and 4 drinks. If I get to like 5, good night. Like,
it's a peak, right? You go up and then it comes back down.
What do they call it in Beer Fest? They talk about it. Like, they have a scientific name for it, and I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
Drop it in the comments if you guys remember it, but let us know where we're wrong.
Other pros that we haven't talked about yet. So I said the deck patio was a good post-round beer deck.
Choice.
Had some really, really good times, and it wraps around too, so you can kind of like get an umbrella and grab a little seat over there, or you can be like right in front of like one of the holes. I think it's 9 coming in 9. That you can look out at. Yeah, that was a cool deck. Like, I enjoyed the just that scene. It wasn't necessarily a restaurant by any stretch. I'm gonna cover that in my cons, but as a bar goes and like a drink spot, I was a fan. I also said the pro shop was kind of stocked with some merch. Like, it actually, that was out of our trip. I think I was like looking the hardest at some of the stuff they had there. Because that building's not that big, but the pro shop sits in front and it actually had some good stuff. And this is a theme with PNW golf, as you are aware. But like, whenever we go up there, TJ and I are like, we don't get Jones's golf bags by us. We don't get Seamus golf stuff. We don't get any of these matchstick or any of these other things. So when I'm like at Wildwood or one of these other courses, I know I'm going to drop $100 because I'm like, I'm bringing this back. I'm going to take this head cover. I'm going to take this hoodie or whatever it is. And they had some good stuff in that pro shop.
Well, and that's, I will say again, that's a testament to the crew that's out there now. That's made some good changes, because I mean, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you go out there and you'd be lucky to find a towel that you wanted to buy. I mean, there wasn't a lot, and now, they got Jones bags, they got a bunch of good, cool different hats. So they're definitely doing a good job of getting everything lined up for them.
Yes. I would like a better logo. I don't want to transition yet. Let's just say real quick. Any other goods you guys have? I had the course condition, it drains well, and all that kind of stuff too. We talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hit on pretty much everything. I love the variety of shots that you can hit out there. Like I said, it's not an overly challenging golf course. Like, you're not going to be like, God, you're not at Pacific Dunes. You're not going to be like just trying to get out of bunkers to save your life. But yeah, there's 4 putts in play out there for sure. And you got to know where you're trying to attack and how you're trying to attack. It's also a good place that if you're around the green, man, just grab that putter out. If you don't feel comfortable, throwing those hands around and getting queued up by the green, just pull the putter out and, putter from off the green. Try to get an auto 2-putt once you're on the green. Auto 2-putt. If you can 2-putt all around out there, you're going to be doing great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Also, my last one too was the price. So I mean, I didn't check when we were out there, but like it's $45 in the week, 55 on the weekend. I mean, that's pretty reasonable rates for what it is.
I mean, it's for some of my buddies that live, no offense, live in Southern California, live in some other places. They're like, that's what I pay for 9 holes at a crappy course, and it's gonna take 3 hours to play 9 holes.
Can attest.
I've played I haven't played a lot of golf in LA, but I have played Penmar, which I do hold close to my heart. We played as a 5-some, and my golf bag was a plastic bag full of beers. So we had
You're that guy.
Yeah, I was like, going to LA for my birthday, wasn't planning to play golf. My buddy was like, hey, let's go play golf tomorrow morning. I was like, okay, cool. We show up, and he's like, hey, so we play in 5s. I was like, okay, whatever. And it didn't have any of my hopes up, but great breakfast at Penmar. Shout out
100%.
But yeah, pretty funny playing some golf there with just a variety of LA guys that I had never met before. So
yeah, I did a photo shoot actually at Penmar for my day gig. I did some golf modeling, and we only booked out the practice green that day. But got to have the breakfast at Penmar, and I was like, this is actually a really good golf course breakfast.
Yeah, it's solid. I think I had a breakfast sandwich, and I was like, man, this is like top 5 breakfast sandwich I've ever had.
The cafe there is really good. They actually have an espresso machine in there, Massey. So like, you know that you're actually going to get some good golf course coffee. Like I think it taps a little bit into it's in Venice, so it taps a little bit into the LA bouginess of like, we know we need to have some of the amenities taken care of because we're not going to be able to make up for it in the golf. So it covers some of its other bases because it knows where it lacks.
Yeah, don't get me going on coffee again, but I will say for being PNW, where the hell is the golf course coffee? Like, there's so many cafes and good coffee in Portland. Yeah. And so many courses just have coffee on a burner, and that's it's a missed opportunity for somebody.
It's a very interesting dynamic that we have up here. It is, especially nowadays, it's very pro shop oriented, like gear oriented. Like that's what I feel like. It's just that's what everybody comes for. And then I will say, I know some friends that operate golf courses, and it can be a challenge to get food and bev going. And I mean, it's a whole separate business technically, so it can be hard to figure out. Hold on.
Like you got to get the license and the permitting and all that stuff, and then you got to buy all the whatnot. But I have a dream separately of owning a coffee cart that specializes at golf courses that you just pay us to show up and we'll handle coffee. I think that would draw people to your course. If you're like going off in the morning, you're like, let's choose that one because they got like a guy making espresso drinks and cold brew and stuff like that right off the pro shop.
Oh, for sure.
I would go there. All right, let's get into some of the bads. Speaking of food and beverage, I'm going to go off here first. The restaurant that they are trying to promote on the site and on the resort for the hot springs side. I will say the food looked good. I did not sample the food, so I will not speak to it. But I saw people ordering and it looked good. But I also saw a lot of people complaining about how long it was taking to get the food. And I think that was more of a staffing issue, which you could say could be a management staffing type thing. But also, there was no like restaurant. It was the bar, and there was some seating around it, and then the patio. And it felt very much like a bar that you would walk up and then place an order at, which is fine for some stuff. But when you're advertising a restaurant, I would not call this a restaurant, really. I'd call it, we're going to bring out some food to you that we're not going to have ready-made right in front of you. So, yeah, I mean, I won't speak to the food, but I heard people complaining around me. And on the same line of that food thing, when we were making the turn, it was really hard to grab something because there's only one person, one register, and there were only three people in front of us. And we filming, we're like, I don't want to spend any more time than we need to because we want to be respectful of the people behind us. I abandoned getting something because I was like, this is taking way too long. And it was a little tough to grab something at the turn here. So I'm going to knock for that.
Yeah, I think I grabbed the last pre-made breakfast sandwich, and that was around 12:30. So it had been sitting in the warmer for a little bit. So I don't feel necessarily the best trying to give it a judgment. It was
Yeah.
passable and it worked, but usually for me it's going to be a ding on if I have to go into like the full same restaurant that services the course after the round, or anyone who also is staying at the hotel, and you don't necessarily have like a separate station for people trying to make the turn. It feels very cumbersome to park the cart, go in, order, get whatever you ordered, bring it back out, and then like either the guys are, and then you run into that weird conversation where the guys who are on 10, you don't know if they're, or sorry, if they're on 9, you don't know if they're stopping. You don't know if they're,
Yeah.
I think during our round, I think they were already quasi mad at us for playing slow, when not realizing there was not really anywhere else for us to go.
Yeah.
But you don't want to add to that. So you're trying to be quick, and having to go in does not necessarily help with that situation, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly what I will say is that it's still an improvement from what it used to be at one time. I mean, I was back there. I went back there one time. Um, it was definitely a weekday, so it wasn't a weekend. And it was, again, probably, I don't know how many years ago. Let's say 10 years ago. And I've been up there, and oh, can I grab something to drink? And the person up front's like, oh yeah, kind of walks back there, and at this point it was the person who was checking us in for golf, so there wasn't even
Same person.
there wasn't even anyone in the kitchen. It was bags of chips and this and that, but they still had the space, right? So we walked back there, and there's still full bar. And this young lady was 20, 21, and kind of was like, you guys are asking me stuff that I don't really know about. And I was like, okay, well, like, can we get a couple cocktails? And she was like, yeah, sure. And I asked her for a John Daly. She was like, I don't know what a John Daly is. And I was like, well, it's like vodka, lemonade, iced tea. And she was like, oh, okay. She was like, hold on, let me make sure, we have everything. And she had everything. Then someone came up to check in. And then she's like, you know what? You can just pour your drink. And I was like, okay. And so I just poured drinks for our group, and we just went out. And then we went back at the end of the round. I was like, hey, we need to settle up for those drinks. And she was like, it's on me. Don't worry about it. And I was just like,
oh man.
and I mean, again, coming from Oregon, where like OLCC, like, they're like, I get carded with going in with my 4 and 2-year-old to a place at a restaurant, and they're like, well, OLCC, and it's just very, very strict. And then going up there, it was like another planet. They were like, yeah, you go ahead, do this. And so
you're good for it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, again, it was great in the time. But I will say, certainly having it staffed where, the person that is ordering for the people sitting in the restaurant should not also be taking care of the golfers at the turn, right?
No.
And then having, I've even had it where, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I've been up there where, for whatever reason, the greens crews, after mowing or rolling, they don't put the pin flags back in, and it happened once early in the round, and it was early morning. I'm usually out there pretty early. And I was like, God, okay, I'm just going to throw it up there by the green. I know the green's up there somewhere. I don't know where the pin is today. And then it happened again a few holes later. And I was walking too. And so I ended up walking all the way up, 150 yards up, grabbing
to go put the pin
in, and then going back and hitting my shot, because I was like, come on, all right. Like, it happened once. I get it. It's a mistake. But it was like 3 more times that round. And again, so I've seen everything from, going up there just this year and really, having a pretty high level golf experience, compared to years ago. We would show up and say, yeah, we booked the 7:30 time. And they say, no, you didn't book the 7:30 time. And I have it on my phone. Here's the 7:30 time. They're like, oh, well, it says you're at 8:30. We have 4 groups in front of you right now. And I'm like, well, how does that work? So just, I've seen all
Yeah.
sorts of stuff go on up there. And I'm very glad to report that, in the last few years, everything has gotten much, much better with the crew that they have. So
Yeah.
I'll say that most of my bad will come prior to this current ownership and the current management running it for sure.
That's a good thing, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're making
Put a little
progress.
asterisk on that one for.
Yeah. I had a bad, which was the holes. The back nine runs together because they're switchbacks. If you look on a map, they're just stacked on each other, right? You look at 9 through 15, and it's literally this way, that way, this way, that way, this way, that way. And it got old to me a little bit because I was like, all right, I've seen this. It's maybe this one does something a little different when I get down there,
But yeah,
but more or less off the tee, I'm doing the exact same thing I just did. And then the wind too, they have no control over it. Obviously, they chose this land, and the land's good for other reasons. But it did get windy, and I've heard from Alex and Chris who live up there that it can be some pretty windy rounds up there in the gorge.
I mean,
So
it can be virtually unplayable. I mean, because
yeah,
if it's blowing 20, then the gusts are at 40. And if it's gusting at
Mhm.
40, it's not really fun to play golf. I mean, I've been out on Old McDonald and in, sideways rain and 40 miles an hour. And, there's only so much fun you can have in that kind of
yeah,
situation. I mean, the most
yeah.
fun we had was pouring beers into each other's mouth from like 10 feet away and the wind just carrying it straight in.
Watching it carry.
But that's, again, I've been up there. And so I will say, I typically try to play up there in the morning. Afternoons
Yeah, before it
usually
picks
get
up.
pretty windy. And then if I'm up there in the evenings, it's amazing because as soon as that sun drops below, I guess later in the year it's the Washington side, early, or middle of the summer
Yeah,
it's a little bit different. But as soon as that sun drops, you'll still have light for an hour, and just like at the Oregon coast, man, that sun goes away and the wind just dies, and it's just calm
yeah,
and peaceful. And you can get some really really good rounds of golf in up there again in 3 hours if you're not playing peak, Saturday or Sunday. So
yeah. Speaking of beer, if anyone ever doubted that you grew up or loved the PNW, you have a Rainier beer space thing behind you, which I've been admiring since you've been talking.
yeah,
It's a Star Trek reference, isn't it?
yeah,
It's a USS Enterprise.
yeah. So, and
Yeah,
that's shout out my wife's uncle. He was a very very talented artist, and we have
That's
some
sick.
incredible pieces from him. But yeah, that Rainier
yeah,
piece. I
that's
mean, I
sick.
met my wife. We saw some of the pieces that her family had, and I'd say 5 years ago or so, we started going through it, and because I was like, I want to, let's honor him by putting some of this stuff up in our house and stuff. And the
Yeah,
Rainier one was always like, that's mine. I'm for sure that one is mine. And we have a great Jerome Kersey one of the Blazers too. So those are two
oh,
of my
nice.
well, I guess I shouldn't say mine. My wife's prized possessions.
Yeah,
But they're yeah, it's funny. And I actually worked in the beer industry for about 5 years.
oh, no
When I
way.
was like 22 to 27, so have a lot of good contacts in that industry, and unfortunately, I am a beer snob because of it. But beer snob, I can still enjoy some Rainier, some Silver Bullets on a golf course. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of my favorite, weirdly, I'm not a lager guy, but I had Rip City Lager in Bandon
Yeah.
Dunes a couple years back, and that was the only thing I wanted to order after I had it. I think I had like, I don't know, 3 a day every day we were there.
Well, and so
Uh,
I don't even think they have it now because now they have the Sheep
no,
Ranch Lager. So the Sheep Ranch
yeah,
Lager is
I
taking
didn't see
over.
it last time we were there. I was so bummed. Um, anyways, any other cons for you, TJ?
I had one. I think when we talk about how we're rating these golf courses and kind of putting them to the must play test, and we kind of talk about if you're planning a trip to the area, accounting for how much time it can take, the hour drive both ways could be a lot for someone. Or if you are coming to town and you necessarily don't have easy access to a car, that can be, it's a little, for a course that is trying to appeal to the Portland market, it is still an hour drive to get out there. So it can be difficult for some people. So I think it's not necessarily a con for me. And like I spoke before, the drive in is phenomenal. There's not a whole lot like it. But if you are trying to plan around it, might not be the best suited for a trip that you're taking.
Not the move. That was that was the last one on my list too, actually. So, should we dive into the test?
Let's do it.
Okay. Before we get into the must play test, though, we're going to hear once again about our sponsor for today's episode, Gimme Pro. TJ, I know you've had the Gimme Pro now for more than a few rounds. I'm curious, have you been using it consistently, and do you feel like there's been a difference in your short game?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the confidence that I have around the greens right now has dramatically increased over the last few months since getting my hand on one of these. I also just recently picked up a new 60-degree wedge. I was playing an old 20-year-old wedge that probably had no grooves on it, so it never came out of the bags, and I was never touching it at all. And now I was like, okay, I want to be able to hit a 60-degree around the green. There's definitely times where I'm short-sighted. I miss a ton of greens, so I need to be able to have that shot in my bag, and being able to have something here. Just entertain me here for a second. Everyone, quiet at home for a second. That's the sound of 24 golf balls. And that's how much time you get to spend practicing before you have to go back over to whatever area you're practicing short game in and go pick up all of your balls again. It's going to be more than enough time to try and groove in the different types of shots that you're going to need as a golfer, whether you want to practice, flop shots that are at the front of your stance, or you want to practice a nice little like bump and run. You're not just doing like 3 balls and then moving a target. It's like, I know that you're not going to hit from the same shot all of the time when you're out playing around, but you do need to know and have the muscle memory to be able to execute that shot. So being able to practice that shot 20 times in a row and really just groove it into your muscles and know like, okay, this is how far I need to bring back the club for the ball to travel to my aim point and kind of get in that space. It's absolutely huge. I see a huge improvement in my game. My putting's still terrible, but Gimme Pro can't help me out with that. But the short game has come a long way. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about the Gimme Pro. And also, they're still doing a 10% discount off for all of our listeners. You head over to their website, GIMMEPRO.golf, and use the code MustPlay10. They're going to give everybody 10% off and get out there and start practicing.
All right, Scott. So the must play test, we're just going to be doing pass fail for these 10 questions. It's got to get a score of 6 out of 10 or better to be up for debate if it's going to earn must play status, or 7 out of 10 or higher automatically earns that status. Anything below a 6 out of 10, we call maybe a should play. So question 1, the Augusta test. Is this course easy to get a tee time on? Does it have a straightforward booking process, and are there times available the week of your intended play?
Yes.
As the local, please tell us one way.
Yes, it's very easy to get up there and play. So I think it absolutely passes.
Good by me. I mean, it was the first course we booked on our trip, I believe, because it was the easiest one.
Oh, I mean, you don't have to sign up, you don't have to log in. You can just get right in there and book it, which again has been made a lot easier in the last few years for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's not exactly peak season right now, but even doing a little poking around right now, just doing some research before the pod, it was like there was still a decent amount of prime tee times available for even like this upcoming weekend. So
yeah,
I had a feeling it was going to be a pass here.
You should probably get out there because I think tomorrow's the last day of sun for like a week, or at least probably the next 6 months, Scott. So you should probably get out there.
Unfortunately, today's going to be tomorrow doesn't look too good.
Oh no.
But okay. I'm probably after this I'm probably going to go do some fall shooting here tonight before we have a little family dinner. So
okay, so that's a pass. 1 out of 1. So question 2, the bang for your buck test. Is this golf course worth the rate you pay? Do you feel like this course is a good value during peak season?
Absolutely. I think that's easy, no doubter. Again, I've never paid more than $70, $75 with a cart. And, again, you can pay a lot more to walk at courses that aren't as good, so.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with you on that too. I am, even during peak season, one thing for me out here in Arizona, we have a ginormous fluctuation of pricing, right? You go from like a $30 summer round to a $300 winter round, and it becomes unplayable. And so in the Portland area, I always look at what are the upper and lower limits. And this one's pretty tight. Like it's pretty similar year round, which I think is incredible. So definitely a pass for me on the bang for your buck test too.
Try living in a place where it's always peak.
Yeah, right.
Southern California. I mean, if you tell me that I can get out and play a full 18 for less than $75 with a cart, I'm in pretty much every time. You can count me in, so it's going to be a pass for me.
Yeah. All right, 2 for 2. Question 3, the Iverson test. Does this course have good practice facilities? Would you spend time warming up or just head for the bar before the round?
We talk about practice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. And, great point, TJ. You said earlier, the practice green sets you up for some of the undulation and some of what you're going to see, which is always, I'll tell you what, I love Bandon Dunes. I have always had the biggest knock on that practice putting green at the practice center because it is so flat. And you go from that to Old Mac or Pacific Dunes, and no putt is going to look like the one that you had. And I guess, you got the punch bowl over there by Pack
to
punch bowl warm right up there with a little bit. But still, it's I always like when, the practice facilities give you a little taste of what you're going to get. And the easiest way to do that is 1, you get a hit off grass, and then 2, make a practice green that looks something like what you're going to see out on the course.
Yeah, I thought the range itself was peaceful too. Like the perch it sits up on and nothing over there to the right. This is a nice little corner. I would totally just have a beer here and hit some balls if I wasn't playing around,
Yeah, it's a pass for me. I think the only way that you could ever knock it would be if it was a busy Saturday or whatever, and maybe there wasn't enough spots on the actual range itself. But that's neither here nor there, right? That's completely situational. They've done their best to prepare you for it.
All right, we've seen courses have strong starts like this, and then the middle they peter out a little bit. So I'm curious to see how it does. But it's 3 for 3 right now, which is awesome. So question 4, the Jonesy test. Could you see yourself spending $100 on merch in their pro shop? Do they have a logo or apparel worth wearing? TJ, kick us off.
I'm going to go with a nay here. I did purchase a hat. It's funny because sometimes courses get a little slighted if they're like the last course you go to on a trip because you've already spent so much on golf and so much on merch where you're like, all right, I got to cool it a little bit. While there was some cool stuff in here, I don't love the logo. The hat I even bought didn't have their traditional logo on it. It was the one with the truck on it.
Oh, okay.
That's not their. I don't even necessarily know what their traditional logo represents.
It's just the script, just the Elk Ridge script writing. That's kind of like
which looks like a varsity.
It's just the classic, cursive script kind of.
It just didn't move the needle for me. Some of the merch that was in there was cool for like not all pro shops have that merch, but it didn't feel like it was something that I felt like I needed to buy at the golf course. So that's going to be the reason why it's a fail for me.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. I hate to say this, but I would agree. I'm going to say it's a no. And I'll also shout out my boy Ryan out at Wildwood because I think he set the tone for what a pro shop can be like and what the merch can be like. And I think again, maybe we need to do a little collab, PNW and Elk Ridge, because I think there could be some insane merch coming out of that place, just with kind of the cult following that it has. And so it's something that I wish there would be more, and maybe a couple of alternate logos that they could play into a little bit too. But
tap Ryan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ryan's going crazy on graphic design lately,
he's
and I
crushing
think he's chomping at the bit to design some golf course logos for people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I shout him out almost like every episode, I feel like, because when we get to this question, someone like literally last episode, we were talking Southern Dunes here in Phoenix, and our guest goes, "What's like your favorite logo in golf?" And I was like, Wildwood, honestly. Like the Sasquatch is so tight, and I love that whole look. But I will say on this question, I mean, it's already a fail, but I had not purchased any merch on this trip, and I was looking to spend $100, probably around there, because I wanted to go home with something, and I didn't pull the trigger on anything. So like even thinking I'm gonna buy something and still not pulling the trigger, it's like it's some cool options, but there was nothing there that really spoke to me. So it's a fail as well. So 3 for 4. Question 5, the buzzworthy test. Are there multiple holes worth talking about? Does this course have more than one hole that a group would immediately want to go play again?
I'm going to say yes. I think there's some very spectacular holes. I do think there's a couple letdown holes, like you were speaking on the back 9. You get like 11, you go up the hill. 10, you go up the hill. 11, you go down the hill. 12, you go up the hill. 13, and it's just like that same stretch. Yeah. I do think a couple of the drivable par 4s, down the hill are very, very cool. And then I think 16 is probably one of like my favorite holes.
Par 3.
Yeah, 16 is really good. And then 15 too. 15 I think is really good too. The kind of dog leg left. Towards it where you can kind of blast it right over the left side if you want to. I mean, overall, I would say it's just one of those courses that, it's pretty visually fun to watch the ball fly around there. So I would say pass.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say pass too. And because there were a lot of holes that I was not, eager to go play again, to be honest, but this was maybe one of the only courses where I can say this, that both 9 and 18 were fantastic holes, in my opinion. Like most of the time you play courses, 9 and 18 are just getting you back to the clubhouse. There's no, it's just like, we need to go this way. And so we'll throw a lake or something here and try and make it interesting. But both holes were super intriguing. You could play it different ways. 9 had the road on the right-hand side. So, you're like, okay, how much am I hitting driver here? Or am I trying to put a wood out there? And then there's water on the left. So if you don't go driver, am I going to reach it? It's a pretty long hole. I think it's par 5. And then, and then 18, coming back down, we were like at the end of our day and we were just kind of goofing around. And then as soon as I hit my ball off the tee, I was like, oh, this is a really cool hole. Like the way that the fairway opened up to the green, and behind 18, I think it had like, there was like something off to the right, but I was like, this looks so much fun. I want to go play this exact hole again and see what I could do if I could fade it or try doing this. And so just because of the 9 and 18, literally those 2 holes, I would pass this question.
Yeah. I was going to be a fail just because of the stretch in the middle. I think it kind of, it's one of those things where it kind of just sticks out in my mind. And I think, I yearn back to say if we weren't playing a match, I don't know if I would have remembered a ton of the front 9 either. But I just remember exactly how we were playing those holes, and I remember exactly everything that happened. But that's okay. We're allowed to disagree here on the pod. That's why we have 3 votes and not just 2.
Okay, so 4 for 5. Question 6, the Glizzy test. Does this course have good food at the turn? Are you eating here or packing your own snacks?
Unfortunately, I'm going to be packing my own snacks. Again, I always love to support food and bev whenever they have it. But again, it's got to be something that's keeping me at the course if I'm going to be having a meal. And like, I'll grab a Glizzy at the turn. Just because you have to a lot of times. But again, this one, you pack a PB&J, you'll be pretty happy.
That's TJ's move right there.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, that's the plight of me traveling to go play golf, is I can't bring as many Uncrustables as I want to, or any. If I can tap whoever we're staying with and say, hey, can you run to the
Oh,
store?
yeah.
If you're swinging by Costco this week, can you buy a box of
Yeah.
Uncrustables for me? I'll probably eat all of them. But yeah, this one's a fail for me. I think if the food is good enough, it can overcome the fact that I have to go into the restaurant and it doesn't have its own standalone station with pre-made food. But I don't think that the food here does enough to overcompensate for that. So that's why it's a fail.
Yeah. Agreed. Pretty straightforward. So 4 for 6. Or no. Yeah. 4 for 6.
Yep.
Question 7, the Marshall test. Does this course have a decent pace of play? Can you rely on a relatively quick round here if you have somewhere to be after? Scott, we're going to go to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Don't remember ever seeing a Marshall out there. But I will say everybody out there plays pretty fast. Especially if you get, like, again, I play out there early mornings. If you get caught out in front of some of the locals, you'll look behind you and you'll be like, oh, a couple 75-year-old guys, like, I'll be fine. They're going to be on you in a second because they play in like 3 hours tops. If you're not playing in 3 hours, you're slowing them down. And I mean, I'm a very fast player. I don't take practice swings. A lot of my buddies laugh because they're like, I didn't even see you hit. We're walking up to a tee box, you're already hitting. But
that's Shawn.
It's one where that's one of the only places I've been like, felt like I'm being pushed when I'm playing in 3.5 hours.
Massey, are you telling the story or am I?
No, go ahead. I know why you're laughing.
We did see a Marshall because the Marshall was called because the guys behind us were locals and were playing so fast. And they were saying these guys are playing slow because we were filming on the front nine.
Yeah.
And admittedly so, I think we almost play faster when we're filming because we are so conscious of not wanting to be the guys who are playing slow and are filming at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we did see the Marshall, and we told him also, it's not us. Like, we can't play up into the next group into us. And admittedly, I think the Marshall caught back around us when we made the turn because we did go into the restaurant. We did order food. He grabbed us. He said, hey, I'm going to let these guys play through. They're kind of a bunch of locals, and they get a little uppity about having to play slow because they admittedly want to play fast. There's some older dudes who are trying to get in a 3-hour round. And we said, yeah, no problem. We couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It wasn't us.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, yeah, you guys don't even worry about it. Like, that's on them. And admittedly so, once they got through, there was no problems with our round for the rest of the day. So this was going to be a pass for pace of play for me.
Yep. I would say the only thing you could argue here is that you have the drive back. So it could be tough to like schedule this if you're doing something in the afternoon. But because the pace of play is so fast and we witnessed that too, I'm passing this question. I totally agree. Mm-hmm. So 5 for 7. It's doing really well here. Question 8, the high handicapper test. Would a mid to high handicapper enjoy this course in typical conditions? Is it fair to all handicaps, and are the greens or pin positions fair?
This is a tough one, man. I brought some higher handicap buddies up there, and you can get exposed very quickly. I would honestly say, unless you're under a 15, I mean, like, I don't think a 20 or 20 plus handicap is going to have a lot of fun out there other than looking at the views. They have to have a very good attitude about those greens and about, like, again, you can hit two really good shots and you can have an absolutely impossible 2 or 3 putt, to follow that up. So, I mean, honestly, I would say it's a fail in regards to that, which to me isn't a knock on the course, right? It's like most of my favorite golf courses, I don't think a 20 handicapper plus should play either. But again, I guess privileged to be saying that.
Well, not to mention the wind would make it really hard for mid to high handicaps too, right? That's demoralizing for anyone. And when you're spraying the ball, if that's the reason you're a higher handicap, that's not fun.
Mm-hmm. We almost always preface this question on it determines what makes you a high handicapper. Is it that you struggle off the tee? Are you chunking anything through a mid to higher iron? But here the the putting's going to be punishable regardless of what your handicap is. So you're going to hurt. It's going to be painful anyway. Most high handicappers aren't going to be good putters anyway. So especially on these greens. So it's a fail for me as the high handicapper who miraculously became a scratch golfer halfway through the round.
Once you were freed up.
Yeah, right.
All right, 5 for 8. Question 9, the vibes test. Is this course worth staying at post round? Do they have a good restaurant or patio scene?
Restaurant, no. Patio, yes.
Yeah, I honestly am probably gonna have to say fail, just due to like everything, full package, right? It's like you're out there, you can enjoy it, but then you're looking at, okay, I got to drive an hour back. So are you really going to hang on the patio for an extra hour after a round? I mean, if you're staying out there, absolutely, right? But that's also because there's not a lot to do out there. So I think it's fail, just because, again, and I put a knack on it. There's some very strong vibes at some of the clubhouses and some of the public courses in the Portland metro area that I think you just to compete with that, they're not quite there yet.
It's no Wildwood is what you're trying to subtly say without saying it, right? I'll say it. I don't live there.
There's a couple others that do a pretty good job too, but yeah, it's
most definitely.
Yeah. Even like Reserve, I love their restaurant inside. Like they've got a pretty good setup, and you can go catch a football game there after your round and have like a Guinness and a good burger.
And they got
really
good food, breakfast sandwich, incredible breakfast sandwich out there at the Reserve for sure.
Yeah. I'm failing this one too, even though I shouted out the patio scene as a good in my other one. And the reason is I respect when courses put the clubhouse somewhere that's not the primo view, because they're saying, no, when you're golfing, that should be the experience, right? As opposed to, here's the best spot on the property, let's put a clubhouse. I respect that. All that said, doesn't mean that now what I'm left with on your patio is the best choice. And I thought, okay, I want to see the views, right? I had them all day. Let's have a beer and look at the views. Nope. There's just trees and stuff blocking everything from the patio. So all you have is maybe the 9th hole in the parking lot on the other side. And
the cart barn.
I thought, and I was like, maybe there's going to be like some guys out here where they're like, the energy's high. We were the only ones out there, I think.
Oh, for sure.
It was just weird. It was odd. So I was like, no, it's not it. So I'm going to fail too. Okay, so 5 for 9. So it needs to pass this next one in order to be up for debate. Question 10, the dime a dozen test. Is this course unique to the area, or could you get this golf experience somewhere else on your trip or visit? And for this question, we're going to say larger Portland area, okay? Not just the Columbia River Gorge.
Yeah, no, you cannot. I think it's an absolute pass for that reason. And I think that's probably the main reason I tell people to go out to experience it, is because it's unlike anything you're going to get. It's like you can't really compare it to anything either. I've had this brought up a lot. People say, well, what does it compare it to another course? I'm like, you can't. It's got like a little bit of, like the greens. It's like you got a little bit of like Bandon Dunes or like Wine Valley, Bandon Crossings mixed in there. And then the fairways, it's almost like it's not, Tristan Tree's so flat, but what they do great at Tristan Tree is all the undulation in the ground once you're on it, and then the cuts around, they kind of make it more interesting, which I think Elk Ridge does a really good job of making some of those dog legs and some of those spots you need to hit it on interesting, when predominantly, like two is a very flat hole, 4, it's another very flat hole. But the way they kind of made the dog leg. So I think that it's got all those pieces that, really make it something super unique. And just the fact that there's 10, 15 trees on property that come into play, rather than 500. It's a nice change of pace for sure.
Yeah. TJ?
Yeah, I was very similar here in terms of looking at it at the greater scheme of Portland golf. I'm sure there's probably some courses maybe in the area that get you a little bit of the same views. But in the greater scheme of Portland golf, I think if you're going to drive up to this area, this is going to be the course that you're going to want to play. And it's the one that, if you're going to make the hour drive, this one is the one that is the right one to make that choice at. So it's a pass for me.
Yeah, I can tell. Okay, I'm a pass as well. So 6 out of 10. So it's in debate land. And I know we're coming up here on the hour and a half mark. So let's spend just 30 seconds talking about one way or the other if you think it is truly a must play. I know we just went through the criteria, but who's on the pro side? Scott or TJ, one of you guys leaning towards yes, this is must play?
I'm leaning towards yes. I think it.
Okay, you go first.
I think it is a must play for some of the factors that we talked about. It's a course that you're not really going to get. There's nothing really similar to it. The views are exceptional. And then, I just keep coming back to the greens. The greens are just so incredible that you could play that course day after day or play it twice, and if you had different pin positions, you're playing a very different golf course. And so again, and then same thing with the wind. If the wind shifts and it's not an east wind, predominantly it's always an east wind, but sometimes in the summer we can get a northern or southern, and it's just a very, very cool spot.
Yep. Let me go next. TJ, you can be, for dramatic effect here, the tiebreaker, because I'm going to go on the flip side.
I was actually going to go on the flip side as well, but I want to hear your perspective.
Well, maybe after my argument, you might disagree with some of my points, and you can be on a pro here.
That's fair. I was going to take a strong stance in one direction as to why it's bad, but I want to hear your perspective as well.
Okay. All right. Should I go last then if you're going strong stance on it? Because I could be flipped.
Let me see here. Okay. As the resident high handicapper of the podcast, if I drive an hour out to a golf course from Portland, whether I am visiting or I live in Portland, chances are I do not live in Carson.
Yeah.
And I go out there and I play a course where I hit 40 plus putts. I potentially run into a 2-club wind or a crosswind that is going to push my slice that much further right. I didn't get to eat anything good. I had to just eat maybe the peanut butter and jellies that were already in my bag and some trail mix at the turn. And then I'm done and I don't get to have a good meal. So I'm going to be hangry at the end because I'm probably not going to stay and eat. And I have only eaten what was in my bag. And I have to drive an hour home.
Yeah.
I'm not going back to that golf course. It is not worth the time that I spent driving in both directions for me. So for me, as a high handicapper who is most likely going to have a bad time out there, it's not on my list as a must play.
That's fair. Okay. I think that's a very fair.
Yeah. Okay. So, Scott, if you're not opposed to telling us, what's your
right now? I think I'm like a 7.5, 7.9, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're in the same ballpark here. So for us, I know TJ is a golf nerd as well. Obviously, we do this podcast, but I think the level of golf nerd with you and I might be a little bit more, because TJ and I are very good together. When we came up with this test and when we talk a lot on golf course experience, we have different factors that go into why we enjoy. And there's a lot of overlap, of course, but like I never even thought about merch or thought about like some of the other experience factors until I started playing with TJ. And then I was like, oh yeah, I guess I am starting to evaluate these things as part of like why I would bring people to a course. Anyway, so that said, if I was taking into consideration what I usually enjoy about a course, it's the challenge. It's the layout of the holes. Does it tickle my brain, make me think about shot value and like what I'm doing? And this course did, where there was enough holes to where I was like, oh, okay, I want to try this again. Or, am I going to take driver on this, or am I going to try and hit a better iron? So like that part of my brain was very satisfied with Elk Ridge and I would do it. However, this test is geared towards people who are coming into the area. So whether you're going to take them there or we're going to book it. And I go back to Portland frequently, like I mentioned. And when I go back, I'm not going to put this course on my list of courses I asked the guys to take me to, only because TJ's points, all valid. Also, when I think of what else is in the area, there's other courses, probably 4 or 5 that I want to play before this that I've already played, and one I haven't. And I'm like, yeah, if they convince me we're going out there, sure, I'm up for it. Let's do it. But I'm not requesting this as one of the courses I want to go play. And it's due to the food, it's due to the drive, it's due to some of the holes running together, maybe. And it's also due to the fact that I feel very satisfied with my golf experience holistically in Portland when I play these other courses. This isn't, in a way, something I need unless I really want to go feel the views and the vibes again in that drive. I'm like, yeah. Like, for example, if I was taking someone else out for the first time, I would say, yeah, go check it out. The views are amazing. But once I played it once, I'm like, I'm good. I don't think I need to do it again. So I'm a fail as well, unfortunately, for Elk Ridge here. But hey, what do we know? You're the guy that lives there, all right? So
I mean, and honestly, there's probably a lot of Elk Ridge regulars that love what we're talking about right now because they don't want any more people out on the golf course, right? The guys that were behind you.
Yeah, and I mean, it's still a should play. We're not saying don't go out to Elk Ridge, right? Like, it's still very firmly, it was a 6 out of 10. We're still saying, like, you should play it. We strongly encourage literally anybody to go out there, play it, play Elk Ridge, establish your own rating for it. Like, don't just take ours at face value. Like, go out there. Like, we don't cover courses unless we enjoy a majority of the aspects on it. We have yet to, I think, actually fail a course.
No, we failed. We've had 2 fails. We've had Balboa and Dobson Ranch both got 5s.
Actually, correct. 50, 5 out of 10 is a fail. Yeah, but we still said those were should plays. So
yeah.
I digress.
Okay, well, 6 out of 10. We're gonna call it a should play. And Scott, I mean, you are obviously very knowledgeable about the area, and you were a pleasure to have on. Is there anything else coming up for PNW Golfer that you want to tease or anything that you
No, I mean, I have some really cool projects coming along for 2025, some unique clubs and some rollouts of some properties. I will kind of shout out, there's a new course coming to the Portland area that not a lot of people know about. And I'm going to be doing a pretty big rollout of some marketing for that course coming up this year. It's going to be very different, something that no one has ever really seen or heard about. And it's been kept pretty quiet, so I'm excited. It's Portland metro area. It's only about 20 minutes from my house, and I am after seeing it in person under construction. I'm very, very excited about what it's going to bring to the local community. So I'll tease that a little bit, and I'll say, keep an eye out on my Instagram for more information about that.
Do you know, is it opening this year or next year?
It's probably going to be early next year. So yeah, it's just, again, it's something I've never seen anything like it. And so I think it's going to be a very cool, something that's pretty accessible for a lot of people. And it's going to be fun for, people of all ages too. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure your skills on the photography and videography side are going to sell it. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, legitimately, like, Scott is a phenomenal follow, even if you're not in the Pacific Northwest. Like, his videographer and photographer skills are almost unmatched. They're incredible. Like, we followed Scott well before we got connected with him via Dane or via Ryan. Like, just can't say enough good things about his work. So he is, like, almost a must follow if you just enjoy looking at golf courses. So,
well, I appreciate that, you guys. It's been fun to be on here, and I do have a couple projects that I'm working on down in Arizona, and then I'll be hoping to do some stuff out in the Midwest again next year. So again, wherever you're at, if you like good golf courses and you like kind of seeing some unique perspectives, definitely give me a follow. I'm also.
Are you coming out?
Yep. So I'm working on a couple contracts right now for this season. And so one that's a pretty well-known place, and then another that is a private club that I've been trying to work on for about 2.5 years now. So, which it's there's not many core Crenshaws. I'll say it's a core Crenshaw down in the Phoenix metro area. So not too many of them. So you can kind of have your guess, but it would be a pretty big game changer for me. And then potentially going to be doing some work with Desert Mountain as well, which I've played a couple courses out there.
Yeah. Down in Tucson?
No, out in North Scottsdale.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking. Oh, yeah, North Scottsdale.
North.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys. I'd love to run it back sometime. I think we could talk a lot about all sorts of golf stuff.
Yeah.
So again, appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah,
Scott,
of course.
Loved having you on. As always, guys, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're watching on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate us. It helps us out a ton. And subscribe for many more upcoming courses and episodes. We'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
See you guys.